Hey everybody, welcome to the Marquez Says Show. I'm your host, Marquez Mosier, and this is my co-host, cohort, and eldest son, Austin Jordan. He and I always seem to bring out the feisty side of each other, and it leads to some very spirited conversations. There's never really any one topic. We see the world from many different perspectives, and sometimes we agree, and sometimes we don't. Either way, it gets very interesting, so sit back, relax, and have a bit of fun at our expense as we explore some of the most unexpected perspectives you'll ever hear about the world we live in. So, let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to the Marquez Says Show. Oh, we're off to such a wonderful start with this one. Welcome to the Marquez Says Show. I am Marquez, your host. He is the one who's surprised, although he knew I was going to be recording. I don't know why he's so surprised, but the co-host, cohort, and co-surprised, right there, Austin Jordan.
I'm shocked.
He's shocked. So we had a big old
look. There was a new message that popped up. I had to click on my phone when it never used to do that before. That's why I was like, whoa.
Oh, whoa. New phones, technology. Jeez, what are we going to do?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I wasn't signing the rights to my person away.
What is it? NIL, name and image licensing. That's what the college gets to do now. They get to make money off of it.
No.
Yep. I wish they could have came up with a slightly better sounding abbreviation, but I digress. We had this whole show set up, and we might still get into it, but we were talking about our personal stuff. Well, not like that, but just non-vision perspective stuff. And all of a sudden we realized we should probably be recording this because we're talking about how do you break into opportunity? How do you position yourself in an industry, whatever that industry is, when the age-old question of, well, we don't really want to work with you because we need someone with experience. And then how do you get experience if nobody's willing to work with you? So we were just talking about different ways of doing that. And a lot of times the most easiest way is to start a business. And hey, you know what? That's easy, right? Everybody can start a business. It's not a big deal. No, that's not the case. It takes money. It takes commitment. It takes discipline. It takes money. Did I say that? Did I say it takes money? Because that does. But it doesn't have to take as much money as you think. Not at all. Austin, for example, he doesn't have any money, but
Black road.
but the idea is we were talking about mindset. He mentioned that some of the ways that for him, well, I'll tell you, go ahead. You say it. You can recap what we just talked about as far as the frustration of just trying to make something that you want.
Yeah, we were talking about like the job market, and no matter what you do, if you have like a certain skill set, right? That was the specifics of what we were talking about, is going into whether it be a trade or something more specialized. Those are already such tight-knit groups, and it's difficult to break into. And then you throw in the pandemic world and circumstances attached with it. So all those tight-knit groups became even tighter and smaller because everybody got either furloughed, laid off, or whatever. So now anybody trying to break into those industries can't, because it's basically a closed meeting almost, essentially. And then as soon as those meetings are going to open again, the people that were laid off or furloughed in the first place, they're getting back in first. So now you're in an even more of a line, or not necessarily a line,
smaller
but
pool,
even more
like a smaller pool, an opportunity pool.
Right. There's your small pool of people in it, and then there's a much larger pool outside, which was always the case, but it's even more exaggerated now. And we were talking about how you could have the skill set and all that stuff, but it's frustrating because you don't get the opportunity to show the skill set. And it's that's the reason why I was like, oh, we should record this, is because that's been a frustration forever. Forever and ever and ever. Yep. And we're in such an exaggerated version of it right now that I thought maybe it would be helpful to kind of hear people express those same frustrations in a public forum and be like, yeah, that's really annoying. I'm really, really good at what I do. And no matter how good I am, it won't matter if I can't get the opportunity to show it. but then you're kind of left with two choices. Well, what do? Do you give up, or do you find a way to break in anyway? Or a third choice is find a way to bypass all of that and kind of do your own thing.
Yeah,
And
no, you're absolutely right. And a lot of that has to do with how do you find your, and not niche. It's not even that. It's just how do you find your angle? How do you find your perspective? And that actually does kind of wrap around and tie in with the things that we usually talk about and with vision, perspective, and such. How do you see it? And what you said when you brought it up was the one thing that you could do that might help you break through was the least thing that you could kind of do at the moment. And that's how we got back to like
oh
basically
yeah,
starting your own business. But what people have to realize is that it doesn't have to be a full on, when you say starting your own business, it really means one thing. And the reality is it means, for me, it means you just have a business license. Essentially, that's in and of itself, technically and literally and figuratively, when you have a business license, you are a business. And to just get a business license, it's usually very simple. There may be something you have to do with the city. It's usually something you just apply with for the county. There's usually a fictitious business name of some sort, something like that. I suppose I should put one of those disclaimers about I am not a legal person and legal advice, and you can contact your legal advisor and all that stuff. But
you sound like a mob boss when you say fictitious. What'd you say? Fictitious,
fictitious business name
or whatever.
Yeah. But you basically, it's a county thing, and it usually runs. I mean, I don't know, depending on the county and stuff, it can run anywhere between less than 100 to usually maybe a couple $100, because you have to print them in the local newspaper, which they may do online, etc. But anyway, but the point being though is that when you do that, you now actually you can almost make it a commitment to yourself. Like the mindset that you go into when you like have free time, like we were talking about with you, when you have free time, you kind of like, all right, this is my free time, because you probably have a day job, quote unquote, and this may be your side hustle. And that side hustle is designed to get to being your full-time hustle so that you don't have a full-time job. And it's hard sometimes to have that discipline to go, when you don't have, say, the piece of paper, that, well, this is my free time, and you know what, it's good, I'm just going to actually work on stuff a little bit, but I'm not going to probably concentrate on it. And technically there's actually a red flag too that we didn't even get to before, is that if you couldn't necessarily make yourself disciplined enough to do it beforehand, what makes you think you're going to be disciplined enough to do it after?
Yeah, that was something I was thinking about too when you were talking about getting the license. And I'm guilty of it. Like, the reason I thought it would be good to use me as a character study on this is because I'm very flawed in a lot of ways when it comes to sort of the typical things you would need to do to build a business. I'm not super disciplined when it comes to the stuff that I don't want to do. And like, I've always been that way.
Well, by the way, what you just said though, that's actually not too uncommon when you place it like that. By the way, just for the record, I let the whole thing go. I could have completely hammered him with jokes and all sorts of stuff when he said he's flawed, but I let it go because yeah. So no, my point is actually though, is that that's the point, is nobody wants to do things that they don't like to do. But it's the point of, right. And the difference is like I've told you guys before, that when I say you guys, I mean him and his siblings, but now I'm telling the audience as well. Sometimes you got to do the things that you don't want to do in order to get where you want to be. It's not brand new. It's not original. Other people have said it different ways, but the reality is you got to do things that you don't particularly want to do in order to get where you really want to be. And you're right. The piece of paper, when you said the reason I think it makes a difference, is because I think it gives a sense of pride. It's already a sense of achievement. And I think it creates a mindset that, wow, I spent this little bit of money, which can be a lot of money to someone who doesn't have any money. I spent this little bit of money. I want to make this work. And it may be just the final little thing that someone needs to break over what we just talked about, where, well, if you didn't do it before, what's the piece of paper going to change? It actually can change it. And hopefully that's not necessarily what the only thing that you needed, or it's more than that, but the mindset
Well,
changes.
right. And that's what I was going to say is I think that for some people, and probably for myself as well, is it makes you feel more legitimate. And when everything around you makes you feel like you aren't legitimate, then having something like that kind of helps reinforce your belief in yourself.
Yep.
It makes you kind of feel like, well, I can do this in the world because everybody has their separate sects, right? And we've talked about this on the show before, is you've got your personal world, you have the outside world, you got your friends' world, you got all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's that piece exists in a world outside of your own head.
Yeah.
And that is helpful for when you're trying to do something when everybody says no. And
You want to hear another? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So
Go
you
ahead.
want to know
That's a good
another
place.
thing? And April's gonna laugh is when she hears this, is that business cards. They're outdated.
Oh yeah.
They're useless. You can put them in the fishbowl in order to get a free lunch. They really don't make much difference unless you get really cool ones. I mean, that's something. Or if you're in an industry where you do actually hand out cards, then of course
Yeah.
they make a little bit of a difference. But if you got a business license and business cards, you're legit.
Mhm.
And you need to get rid of those business cards. You need to get hustling to make some money on that. And it's funny because these are things that are not expensive. They just aren't expensive. If you can just save away a little bit to get them. And then maybe in your case, business cards might actually be something that it's one of those things where if you're just talking to somebody because you're at one of the locations at a venue, boom, you may not be able to, here's a card, but you made an impression on them because you cracked a joke or something like that, or you made a astute comment on the music. And then all of a sudden, you can't have a conversation, but you say, hey, this was great. And you hand them the card. Now they actually have something. Will they use it? I don't know. I mean, who knows? But it's better than nothing. It's better than just wondering about it. Yeah, I met somebody and yeah, he was really kind of on top of things and then not having any way to get a hold of you. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
the contact is so important. And it goes to networking, which is, again, none of the things that we're talking about are new, but they're so much more important, I think, than they've been in the modern world. I'll say post-internet. It's more important right now, because the world we live in right now can only function because of the internet. There's no way that we could have. So this sort of connectedness that we have I mean, let's say if everything had to shut down in like what we did in 2020 in 1980, there would have been what, conference calls?
barely.
Do you know how frustrating that would have been?
Yeah.
For I mean, what would the world's economy have done? Like, I mean,
it would have been, your point is well taken. The technology of the day would have done its best. Fax machines, expensive people would have conference calls, like video conference calls. You did have audio conference calls. So it would be.
Oh, that's what I meant. I didn't even mean video conference calls. I have no idea if the technology existed for it back then.
It did, but it was only reserved for the big expensive places.
Yeah. But like, so the only reason, so again, I'm tying into the networking and the internet era of like, it could, this world could literally only exist because of something that has not been around very long. So I'm sure, I'm not smart. Well, maybe I will be some point, but I don't know how to figure out what that untapped part of it is yet, but I'm sure there is one. Yeah. Because it's so new. There's no way that it could have possibly been explored all the way. I'm sure there's something new.
You have AI and virtual world and as well as augmented reality. I mean, those are all on the horizon.
Some of that stuff is scary. That can be used for some bad stuff if somebody really wanted to. But yeah, but tying it back into what we were talking about of trying to break through barriers to create a business when your business is a little bit more focused on yourself versus being a part of a team, or being or your business is you creating a team.
It's when it's more of a skill set and a personal skill set as opposed to it's a service as opposed to a product. It's very it's when you provide a service, it's much more difficult to get, especially when it's a specialized service. to be able to break through, I mean, and basically get that opportunity. It really is making the most of the opportunity. Kind of like what we talk about, I always joke that it's better to be lucky than good, which I wholeheartedly believe. Sometimes luck just is better than actually anything you could ever plan. But on the other hand, luck is also when preparation and opportunity meet. So you better be ready. And some of these things that, the one other thing that you could throw in with the business thing, and it depends, it's not necessary, but it would be helpful, is also having a website. And again, that is nothing that anybody can go and do. So between a business card, a business license, and a business website, all three of those things can make you look bigger than you are. And if you take the most of the opportunity that when you, like you said, about networking with someone, and then when they go to check on you and you have a card, and then they go to check your website, even if it's just a one-page website that just basically explains what was on the business card, you've been legitimized over the person who doesn't have one of those, or doesn't have one of those that's very good.
Right.
And that may mean all the difference. And
Yeah.
like you mentioned, when you're selling yourself, basically, when your specific skill sets, that can make that really could make the difference between you getting an extra call and the other person getting the call. And if you're not doing that, see, that comes back to, that begs the question of, if you're willing to at least get through that stuff and someone else isn't, then you're already ahead of them. And for those who are truly astute looking at that, you would go, well, one took the time to try, the other one hasn't.
Right.
And you'll hear all sorts of things about, well, that stuff, it really isn't making a difference. It doesn't really make a difference. And yes, you can make that argument, but most of the time that's just a crutch or an excuse by that person that they just didn't want to do it. And
here's the thing. If you're going to bet on yourself, even if there's the tiniest percentage chance that that's going to help increase your chances of getting that next job or that next thing, then why wouldn't you want to do it? Like, you could have 99% of it against, like, yeah, it's not going to matter, but that 1% should be enough. And yeah, so I absolutely hear what you're saying.
Yeah, you need to hear that, because part of that goes into the discipline part of when you are accepting, and it does mean that you have to sacrifice. I mean, it absolutely. I mean, there is no way around it that in the beginning, and actually all the way through, there is a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice that you have to do. You have to be able to go, I really want to go out to that new club, whatever, or, you know what I mean? But you're like, no, I need to finish this proposal, or, you know what, I need to finish this example because I think I can get this submitted to someone, or, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
You only have so much time in the day.
Right. And then eventually this was going to sound so much more morbid than I meant it to, but then eventually your days run out.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't even mean that in the way of you die. I meant it like, there's only so much you can take before you're like, is this really worth it? Am I even doing the right thing? But then the reality is, did you really do what you needed to do to make it happen, though? And that's something that I'm struggling with personally, which is why I wanted to talk about this, is because I know a lot of the people that listen to this are going through roughly some of the same stuff. Is like, they have an idea of what they want to do. They want to do it, but it is just, there's so many things in the way. And maybe they feel like me, in the sense that, well, they're meeting these obstacles because they lack a certain discipline, or because they're not willing to make, or not willing, but because they are making certain sacrifices, or because, for whatever reasons.
Yeah. Look,
I'm not saying that I don't have discipline, and I'm not saying I haven't made sacrifices, because Lord knows I've made so many incredible sacrifices to try to do what I want to do.
Yep.
And same with discipline, but I still feel like it's not enough. Well, and maybe it's not. Well, obviously it's not.
I was about to say, I was going to ask you the question about, like, well, are you signed?
Right. Well, that's not necessarily the goal, but
no. What I meant was, I meant that generically, because it makes the point of, you're not where you want to be. That's really what it comes down to. It was a snarky way of saying, you're not where you want to be.
Right.
I mean, by the way, on my own personal note, that what you said is as extremely true, because you've asked me, and I've had a lot of people ask me a lot, especially last year when I was pushing much more of the coaching and some of that stuff about, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? You should do this. You can do this. Oh my God, you do this. You've got these insights. You've got this perspective. Da, da, da. And I knew kind of in my heart of hearts that wasn't where I was. I knew the effort it would take in order to get to some of the places that I said I wanted to be. But I knew very well that I did not want to make those sacrifices, and I was not in a position to expend that kind of energy to do it. The difference is I was content with that. I was fine with that. Now, if you asked me 5 years ago or 10 years ago, totally different answers, totally different situations, but because of obviously different dynamics. But from the business side of things, that is that realization that ties it in with the think more, care more, live more, the awareness part of it. I was aware of that. I knew better. And and for me, my own little growth is that I see people that were doing some of the same things last year, and some of them dropping off, and then some of them taking off and stuff. And I don't feel any jealousy or resentment, which I shouldn't.
No,
But
yeah.
I would feel that though, if I felt like, why did they get it and I didn't? Well, because I know
Right.
damn well I didn't do it. I didn't put in the effort to do what I needed to do. But that was okay. I was okay with that. The difference is when you have somebody do the same thing, say the exact same thing I did, but they're resentful. They either resent themselves, they resent their situation, they resent the outside world, and that's the difference. And that's kind of the difference between you and me, because you have a bit of a resentment, wondering, have I done enough? Can I still do more? Do I want to do more? Now, I think the answer for you is an absolute yes. You can do more, you want to do more, and you're going to do more. But
Yeah.
that's the difference that you were talking
But no,
about for
that's
people
very
that are
true.
listening to this. It's okay if you don't, but you just have to be okay with that. Because if you aren't, then it's just an excuse.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a level of resentment. And the thing to carry the torch of what you said, I don't really feel it towards any outside forces. But I've never really been that type though. I've never really held anything. I've always held myself overly accountable for the things that I either do have or don't have.
Yeah.
So I don't, and I
As you
say
should.
overly,
As
yeah, and I say
everybody
overly,
should.
right, and overly to a fault sometimes, at least from what I hear. But like, so there's no resentment towards any, whether it be an institution or the industry that I'm trying to be in or whatever. It's all towards myself.
Mhm.
But it's like, again, tying this into the point of what I really think I wanted to say and communicate to the people, if anybody's listening, which I know people are, but humbly, if people are listening, like, it's okay to feel that way. I've
Mhm.
spent weeks, well, yeah, no, weeks now, really, really, really considering, was I right? Did I do the right thing moving to Nashville? Am I pursuing the right thing? Should I be putting more energy into something that's a little bit more of a career and make this more of a hobby? Should I, like, all this stuff,
Yeah.
ruminating all of these different ideas? I don't know if I have a solid answer to that question yet, but I feel more content with the fact that I've been having that struggle. I feel more okay with the
Mhm.
fact that I've been asking these questions, because maybe I should have asked them more 5 years ago. And and maybe had I asked myself these questions instead of just more so taking for granted the skill set, I would be in a different position now. But I'm still young-ish, and there's still time. So making these decisions now isn't the worst thing in the world, and having these thoughts isn't the worst thing in the world. And it
No.
doesn't change like, it doesn't really change anything. So just be open to having those conversations with yourself. And as soon as I became a little bit more open with it, I started to enjoy certain things a little bit more. It didn't feel so much like I was going through the motions. It felt like, no, okay, this is kind of why I was doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
So kind of embrace some of those things, I guess, is what I'm saying, if you're feeling a little bit unsure.
Well, and there never, I don't think there is ever an age where you can't do it anymore, at least at some level. I mean,
Yeah.
physical activities that, that could be slightly different, but if it's not tied to that, because you have to take, I mean, it is incredible to me about all of the different things I've done, the career choices, the the different occupations, the different spaces I've been professionally, and how they all come back as resources for me in the here and now. And it's the same thing with you. You have no idea that you may end up, everything that you're going through or have gone through isn't going to be the inspiration for something future, which had you made decisions 5 years ago, you didn't have the same data set. You didn't have the same points of reference to do that now. So when you
Yeah.
tell that to the other people, it doesn't matter if you're younger or older, just remember that everything you're doing is going to, your life is a culmination. I mean, it's a constant building on top of each other. I mean, the one thing I learned when I was going through and just recently I was getting the master's in education, was the learning of scaffolding was something that I really gravitated towards. And I loved it because that scaffolding model, and that you take something and then you build onto it and then you build onto it, was like how I learned. So that was the way it really made sense to me. But it's just the metaphor for life, that every year, every minute, you're just building and building on top of that, and making sure that you don't take it for granted, making sure that you are aware, making sure that you throw in a dose of kindness and make sure you take action. See what I did there? That whole think more, care
Yeah, there
more.
you go.
But that's why that's such a big philosophy of mine. And it is funny because right now I'm working with a couple of different clients, and they're in different stages. This is business wise. And all the things I've done, I'm being able to apply in different levels in different areas. And had I not gone through those, I never would have been able to help the way I am. So the time thing, you're right, but it's never too late until you're dead. And then,
And even then, we don't know.
yeah, that's true.
It's
But it is a
spooky
matter.
season. I don't know.
So you're right. You make a very good point with all that. So
Yeah, I think that was pretty much everything I wanted to say on it.
okay, well, I think maybe we'll just I think this should just be a shorter podcast. We'll just wrap it up at that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we got just under half an hour. If we had commercials in there, we could
We
have a
would need
sitcom.
we would probably need sponsorships for that. So hey, if anybody out there is listening and you want to kind of like get your name in there, no, there's not a huge circulation, but hey, better than nothing, right? But yes, I think you're right. And there's just going to be some decisions that you're going to need to make, some those hard questions that you have already sounded like you're asking yourself, but making sure that to be brutally honest, to say, am I going to be able to say no to something in order for you to be able to say yes to yourself? Because it's not selfish. Or you could truly take the perspective that from here on out, every decision you make, is it leading you towards where you want to be?
Right.
And that's really hard, because that's a really hard, I mean, incredibly hard way to live. But I would almost say it's necessary when you have a true goal. Like for April and I right now, with where we're at in life, our decisions that we make financially and stuff are all geared towards certain goals that we want to do. Like one example is that we are going to visit every baseball stadium, every ballpark when the Giants play there. We have a picture up on a wall with all of the different ballparks, and it has a spot for take a picture of us in each one. So we have next year scheduled out, and we're going to try to hit like 3 a year, which means it's going to take a decade for us to do this. So you talk about like short-term goals and long-term goals. But also, in order to do all this stuff, you got to have a certain flexibility with your profession, your careers. You got to have money and stuff. So every decision that we've pretty much made for this last 6 months, or actually since at the end of last year now, has been geared towards how do we get to be able to travel more, do these ballpark visiting, be able to like fly out and see you, have your siblings come see us. Everything has been designed around How do we do that? And it's a balance. And it does mean sacrifices. It does mean different things. Lo and behold, we only have one car. Oh my God. The world's coming to an end when a household only has one car. But that, what I mean? For us, of course, it's practical. It makes sense. But in today's day and age, when you say, really? You only have one car? But there's two of you. Yeah, I know. But it doesn't, it was one of those things where we really thought about it. We really thought about like, do we really need two cars? No. And it's a weird realization in this day and age. I mean, it's kind of strange to think, I have always had my own car. Now I probably will, don't get me wrong, down the road, but those kind of things, every decision. And for like you have a coffee addiction, making sure that you make your own, that kind of thing, those decisions. You're a decent cook your own food, because each one of those decisions helps you get to where you want to be.
That's true. I do have a coffee addiction.
But it's hard, especially, and it's harder for you or anybody, actually, I shouldn't just say you, anybody who's younger, because the opportunities to do other things, distractions for the most part, are there. And you need to be able to balance, I can't believe I'm going to say this, self-care, and just remembering, because I'm not a big fan. You can listen to one of our other episodes.
That's one of my favorite ones too. I like that episode.
Yeah, I am not a big believer in this whole self-care thing. I think it's just an excuse. People take it to be an excuse just to, I don't know, just to do things, that spend money and do things that they want to do, that they've always wanted to do under the auspice of self-care, and they don't realize they're actually sacrificing other parts of their life. But I do believe though that you have to have your mind right. And in order to do that, you have to make sure that you do take care of yourself. You do take breaks. You do have, that mental acuteness of being able to understand, wow, I'm overworking myself. I need a break. And in those cases, I'm totally good with, yes, go out, get your nails done, get your hair done, get a massage, go take a trip, go to dinner, whatever your preferred is. I am all for that. But
yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I was like, we're not gonna argue about this again, but yeah, exactly how you define like what you described about getting your mind right and all that stuff. That is exactly the definition of self-care, like true self-care to me as well.
Absolutely, exactly. If you're getting your mind right and that's what you're doing it for, then I don't really have a problem with like whatever you're doing stuff. But there's so many people that it's like it's just an excuse. And it's kind of like, that's fine, but let's call it for what it is. You're pampering yourself. You're spoiling yourself. There's a difference between the self-care aspect and then the pampering and spoiling yourself, because pampering and spoiling should be done in moderation, if not infrequently, not regularly.
Yeah. And then so to tie in what you said about excuses and being honest with them, that's a huge part in trying to build a business based around yourself as well. Yeah. Or not even necessarily business, just anything you want to do, or when you're building yourself to be a better person, or you just want to do something.
Yeah.
Like, be honest with the excuses that you're giving. Like, because this would be we could spin this off into another episode. But are all excuses bad? There's a stigma against like being a bad one. Like, and I think that's a very legitimate conversation to have.
It's funny you just said that, because I was actually thinking about saying that. Literally, Austin, this is what I was thinking in my head, because I've always thought about this, is that you're right. Excuses, there's a difference to me, the way I phrase it, there's a difference between an excuse and a reason. There are reasons things don't go well. There are reasons why some things don't happen. That's okay. If you figure out like, the reason is, for example, the reason is I didn't decide to allocate enough time for it. So, well, that's just an excuse. No, actually, that was really what happened. I'm not trying to excuse myself, because that statement, I did not allow enough time for the project.
You take accountability.
Right. That's that's really not positive or negative. If you say,
well, it's negative
so-and-so, if I say my dog got sick, Or no, and that's not a good one, because if your dog really did get sick, that again could be a reason. Although you have to take accountability. But if for some reason, if you said something along the lines of Joe didn't get me the information that I needed in order to complete it, that's an excuse, because you could have followed up with Joe. You could have been, if you could have been very proactive and probably got the information you needed. I mean, ultimately, who knows? Maybe he didn't give it to you and that really did. But then at that point.
No, but that's a good point. And as somebody who works in an area where there's like in my job, for example, there's so much information all the time. And something that a lot of people think is, well, you got to get it from this person. Well, that's not true. How does this person get their information? And usually it's a report. Now, you may not have been trained, or maybe you don't receive that report regularly, but you can get the report and casually read it. For the most part, at least what I've learned, you can more or less figure out how to read something just by kind of comparing it to something else that you do know.
Scaffolding.
So I have a report
scaffolding.
That I do.
That's scaffolding.
Exactly. Yeah, scaffolding is like, if I know how to read this report, and this report looks moderately similar, but it has different information, what is the commonality link between these two? It's like a key. And then how do I read this? Which is serving me pretty well, I feel like, I have to say.
A real world example of that is I'm pretty computer savvy. I'm tech savvy. I would totally put for the most part, I'm above average. I understand how they work in a lot of the back end, but I'm consulting right now with a tech company, and their stuff, I look like I'm an absolute just moron when it comes to their level of technologically advanced and the databases and the SQL and all of the queries and everything. So I don't even pretend. I realize that I'm on a consumer side, that I actually have a lot of information and abilities. So we do a lot in spreadsheets. And that's always been something that I'm just not very strong at. That's not, they'll send me stuff if it has to do with word processing, because I understand those programs, whether it's Google, Microsoft, etc. But I'm not very good. But what I've been doing is I'm looking at one of their spreadsheets for one of the companies, and I look at the formulas and I understand the reference portion. And I'll copy it and realize, oh wait, that didn't line up with where I needed. So, okay, let me try this. Boom. Oh, that got me the information. And so, just like what you said, I spent a lot of last week literally doing that, going, okay, I need to copy this. I need to get this. Crap, that column is not the same column. But I recognize that symbol. That symbol means go fetch something from that column. I'm like, okay.
Right.
And what I will do is literally look at the number and go, okay, it showed me that this person was eligible with this formula on that column. And it's referencing this tab. Mm-hmm. Okay, I got everything I need right there. I can then go to the next one and go, okay, I know it's this tab, so I can put that name into where I need it. And it's this column because that's what it was for this one. Okay. And so far, I haven't broken anything.
Right. It's so funny you say that, because me and spreadsheets, so it was the same thing. I've started, since my promotion, I've had to start doing a lot of schedule stuff. But the schedule template that they sent me to work on was broken. So I had to basically find out why all the formulas were broken. So I like what you said, I looked at one that worked. Yep. And then I was like, okay, so this is why, blah, 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 this is why, and just go in and fix it. And it was really tedious. It took forever. But then it worked and it was done, and that's all you need. You just need it done the one time because it's the template. So now we don't have that problem anymore.
And that's what ties in with what we've been talking about, is that you need to be able to have the awareness of all these things that are going on, and especially the self-awareness. Situational awareness is not quite as important as the self-awareness of what you're doing, because you need to know, if you ask yourself, am I really willing to give up my Sundays because I want to watch whatever football team, whatever that is? Am I willing to give up those Sundays if that's what's necessary, if that's what it means for me to get this business off the ground?
Mhm.
And if you say yes, but you don't actually do it, you find yourself watching the games on Sunday, then there's a red flag to yourself. And if you actually can be honest enough to say, no, actually, it's not that important, then it doesn't mean necessarily giving up on what you want to do, but you have to create a different expectation then that it's going to take
Yeah.
longer, or it's not going to be as much. Or
Right.
maybe it does become, this is more of a hobby for me. It's really, and I'm okay with that. All of this comes down to the phrase, I'm okay with that. Because if you can honestly tell yourself, yeah, I'm fine with that. Because maybe that Sunday is the only time that you do have for yourself. Or maybe that Sunday is spent with people that's the only time you can spend with those people.
Right.
Okay, that's fine. It's this, there's not a one size fits all. But so many people are delusional within themselves. They do not want to admit that they're going to not have the drive, or to reassess. That's more importantly, to reassess what is a realistic. And I know people talk about how, oh, when you talk about what's realistic, then you're not thinking big enough. And I'm like, it's not true. You do need to be realistic in saying that I'm setting this goal. It needs to be a big hairy goal. But if you can't ever reach that goal, then it's pointless to have that goal. You have to
Yeah.
be able to at least get there. And it may be in everything goes right and you do everything perfect. That's the only way you'll hit the goal. Okay. And maybe obviously it won't, you may not hit it, but at least you know that it's attainable.
Right.
And that's,
Exactly.
everybody has to deal with that. I mean, everybody has to deal with that at some level, whether or not when you're younger, when you're deciding on what you want to do, whether or not you should go to college. Usually it starts there. It's like whether or not you should go to college. Then it becomes whether or not, with a professional, whether or not the relationship that you're thinking about, are you going to be able to put what the effort in necessary to make it a success? In this case, we're just talking about it from a business standpoint. Are you really going to be able to put the necessary effort to make it a success? And the key word being success. What do
How
you
do you
determine
define
it? Yeah. How do you determine it to being a success? So, but these are all hard questions, like you said, that you're dealing with. And if you can truly sit back and go, I'm being honest, that's all you can ask for. I mean, and it, you'll find out soon enough, because if like you said, you're happier, things have more joy, that means you're probably making the right decisions. Or being honest. I shouldn't say right decisions. I should say you're
Yeah.
being honest.
No, I
You're
get
being
you.
correct.
Yeah.
With someone else, if you find yourself doing that, but you're still stressed, and you're stressed in the sense of things that you can alleviate,
Mhm.
and you're still feeling resentment, or you're still feeling that cloud, it's probably time to ask those questions again and figure out
Yeah.
what's going on. And by the way, feel free to hit up Austin or I, because we both of us would be more than happy to be like outsider perspective going, you're not doing what you need to
Yeah.
do, or yeah, you are, but we just need to fine tune it. So
Right. Or just listening.
yeah,
Sometimes that helps. Just to have somebody that you may, or maybe they don't, or that you think they do, or maybe they don't, or whatever. Just hear what you have to say, whether they understand it or not. And
yeah,
so
mostly that's just because that way, when you talk out loud, especially to someone else, you'll hear it from a different perspective, because you hear yourself saying it out loud, and
yeah.
B, you end up realizing, or the audience, you say things that in different ways, because you're talking to a different audience. And when you do that, it creates a different perspective,
Right.
which is what I always, quote unquote, preach about, is that just try something, say something, put it out there, because you have no idea what chain reaction that's going to kick off.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a big
Okay.
believer in vocalizing your thoughts.
All right. See, that was good. That was a good tie-in with the rest of it. So
That was good.
So
It's like a three act story there.
absolutely. Was it a hero's journey? Because those are my favorite. Actually, I shouldn't say those. They're not my favorite, but they're really cool when you have the right storyteller.
Very true.
So, all right. Well, in that case, we'll wrap it up. with a little. You
Dance.
can think more, care more, live more, and remember, you can change your life. We can change the world one decision at a time. Anything else, Austin? You got anything else?
One.
One
One It's a
time.
sample. It's a popular sample. Yeah,
Okay.
nothing to add. Nothing of substance to add. I could add so many things, but nothing that would contribute in any meaningful way whatsoever.
We'll save those for next time.
That was good.
All right. Talk to you next time, everybody.